Basically, to start out, we want to know what is the Farm Bill. And it's really the primary food and agricultural policy tool of the federal government. So it is an omnibus bill, which means it covers a huge array of areas, and some of these are listed here as the common titles of the bill. So these include trade, commodity programs, rural development, farm credit, conservation, ag research, which funds a lot of the federal grants that some of your PIs might receive, food and nutrition programs, which you'll see is a huge portion of the Farm Bill, as well as some ag marketing. And as such, it is under the jurisdiction of the United States Department of Agriculture. And the cost of the Farm Bill, this current Farm Bill lasts until 2018, but the budget score budgets it out over 10 years. So if the Farm Bill were to go 10 years, the cost of the Farm Bill is an astounding nearly $1 trillion. So to put that in perspective, $1 trillion over 10 years, that $1 trillion would be similar to being able to fund the Department of Defense for about 1.5 to 2 years in the United States. So it is a huge, huge program. And here's a breakdown of where the costs actually go, the money that's being spent by the federal government. And this is probably a little difficult to see, but many people don't realize that the major cost of the Farm Bill is actually the food stamp and nutrition title. That accounts for 80% of the whole Farm Bill. So although it's called a Farm Bill, much of it is actually going towards low-income food stamps or women that need extra food stamps and things like that. So vast majority of it is food stamps, and the rest of it, crop insurance is a big portion. Conservation has quite a slice of the pie here, commodity programs, and everything else. So the research funding that you receive, your PIs might receive, is actually in this real tiny sliver right here. So if you hear some of your PIs complaining about that a little bit, it's just a little piece of the pie. Here's some public perceptions that might be out there about the Farm Bill, and I don't mean to say that I support this perception or I discount this perception, but some people view it as, here's a farmer saying, I can't stand lazy people that are on welfare. Meanwhile, he's towing a tractor with a wagon full of money that's called farm subsidy. So some public views this as the government giving farmers money hand over fist. So that's one perception. Here's another very similar one where a pedestrian is saying it's looks like they passed the Farm Bill and the plane is coming over showering money on the farmers and saying, too bad the farmers aren't here to see this, and we have a ultra wealthy person driving a limo saying, I am a farmer. So that's again how some people might view the Farm Bill. Going back to a brief history of the Farm Bill, it was actually established in the Great Depression in 1933 under FDR. And really the primary goal at that time was to combat excess crops and low prices to ensure an adequate food supply for the United States. In 1938, there was a requirement in the Farm Bill that it be updated approximately every 5 years, and you'll see that that's not always the case, but that was the requirement at the time. Skipping ahead to 1996, this is where the direct payments come into place. This is payments that go directly to farmers, which I'll talk a little bit about later. And 2002 was really a continuation of the 1996 Farm Bill. There really wasn't too much policy difference from the 1996 Farm Bill. And in 2008, there was increased support for ethanol production and an increase in some of the food stamp support. And the expiration date on the 2008 Farm Bill was actually December 31st, 2012. And this is where I want to talk a little bit about the politics that surround this. So you may have heard a lot of this in the news, but typically the Farm Bill is one area that's very much bipartisan and bicameral, meaning that typically both parties, whether Republican or Democrat, typically agree to support agriculture and support the policies in the Farm Bill, and on both sides of Congress, whether the House or the Senate. What you saw at the end of 2012 and the past few years is the exact opposite, really. So if I move on to the next slide, many of you probably know this, but the House of Representatives is controlled by Republicans, and the Senate is controlled by Democrats, and the President is also a Democrat. Now, I don't mean to tell you which side, is most important or anything like that, but the point is that the two houses of Congress are split. So things have become more and more partisan, and the Farm Bill is not not an exception to that by any means. Does anybody know the most controversial provision that would be in the Farm Bill? Anybody have an idea? It may be pretty obvious. It's the largest portion of the Farm Bill. So it's the food stamps. And that's really what's causing all the controversy in Washington. What you had at the end of 2012 was the House of Representatives that passed the Farm Bill that really cut about $40 billion over the 10-year span of the Farm Bill. And a lot of that came from food stamp cuts. And on the other side of the Capitol, the Senate passed the Farm Bill that cut about $20 billion, and some of that was some of the agriculture policy. Okay, so the House passed about a $40 billion cut, the Senate passed about a $20 billion cut. So Congress, being as fully functional as Congress is today, they decided to extend the current Farm Bill, which didn't cut anything. So it made completely no sense at all, but that's what they decided to do. So, continuing the brief history, they did, at the end of 2012, the Farm Bill was extended until the end of September. Okay, and this was just, you had basically every agricultural organization in the United States, whether it be a more conservative organization like the Farm Bureau or a more liberal organization like Farmers Union, all those organizations pushing to pass an updated version of the Farm Bill, and Congress really didn't respond at that time. So there was a 9-month extension through September, and then we had the same problem again, and we actually had a lapse in the Farm Bill for 4 months. So the current Farm Bill did not pass until February 7th, 2014. If we didn't have a Farm Bill at that time, if that went further, you'd see continued disruptions in a lot of the egg policy stuff. Since it was only 4 months, it wasn't a huge impact, but you would have seen some of the food stamps start to decline. You would have seen milk prices start skyrocketing, which would have all had huge implications in the U.S. economy. But the Farm Bill did pass on February 7th, 2014, and it was really very similar to previous Farm Bills in that it covered a wide range of areas. So this was just a quote from the president saying it's like a Swiss Army knife in that it covers nutrition, research, conservation, innovation, all these different areas of the Farm Bill. Okay. Moving on from the politics, moving away from the politics a little bit, I want to talk about a little bit of the difference between the previous Farm Bills and the Farm Bill that passed. So in the nutrition title, there was a little bit of a funding cut. I think it was $8 or $9 billion over 10 years that was cut in the food stamps and nutrition title. And a lot of that was cut from by preventing abuses through the food stamp system. So double collecting by collecting in more than one state. A lot of this stuff seems very obvious, but they cracked down on some of these abuses. So double collecting was one of them. Preventing illegal immigrants, wealthy individuals, and deceased people from obtaining food stamps. I don't know the details of that. There were protections in there before, but there were, loopholes or minor ways that people got around that. So this Farm Bill kind of closed some of those loopholes. It also increased assistance for food banks to help distribute some of those food stamps and food to some of the needy people. And it established a pilot program to engage able-bodied adults that were currently collecting food stamps to try and get them into the workforce so that they would be off the food stamp program, basically. And again, this was a $9 billion cut over a 10-year period. What else is new in the Farm Bill? It repealed the direct and counter-cyclical program that has commonly thought of as the direct subsidies to farmers. And it also repealed the ACRE program, which is the Average Crop Revenue Election Program. Now, those programs weren't just, those specific programs were discontinued, but essentially they were renamed into the price loss coverage and the agricultural risk coverage programs. And those two are very similar to the previous versions, except the subsidies were cut down a little bit. It also expanded crop insurance, and the idea here was that the farmers would put a little bit of skin into the game, meaning they would have to fund some of their own risk management. So that was greatly expanded in the current Farm Bill. And in addition, it strengthened the livestock disaster assistance program. So if there was an extreme weather event that would cause a disaster on a livestock farm, there was more protection for those farms. It also, through the FSA, it expanded small business and beginning farmer support, so they allowed younger people to get more access and more get into farming earlier and more financial availability for them. Since we're American Dairy Science Association, I wanted to focus a little bit about the dairy provision, which was a huge difference in this farm bill. Previously, if any of you have heard of the MILC program, the MILC program, which stood for the Milk Income Loss Contract, basically that meant when the milk price fell to a certain level, the government would kick in and provide a price support to farmers. But previously, that had no bearing on what the cost of feed was or any other cost for the farmer. So what this farm bill did was really started protecting the margin that farmers had. Okay, so this program will start here in the next couple months. It'll begin on September 1st, and it's authorized through 2018. And at that point, on September 1st, the milk program will expire. And so what this does is it takes the average feed cost based on current Board of Trade estimates, and it takes the difference between the milk price and the actual feed cost on farm, and that's the protection that's available for farmers. So instead of protecting farmers by the milk price with no idea what the costs are, it protects the margin that farmers have. It's calculated based on a 2-month average period, so it's not just 1 month. If 1 month the milk price dropped, this is actually the average of a 2-month period. So January and February, for instance, are averaged, and that's how they calculate the margin. And all dairies are eligible with a $100 entry fee. Coverage, the margin can be protected from $4 all the way up to $8.50 increments. So obviously, if you're being protected at a $4 margin, that's going to be more expensive than an $8 margin, right? Because the $8 margin would probably happen more frequently, and the payments would be less in that program. And you can also cover a certain percentage of your production history. So if your farm is a 30,000 pound rolling herd average, you're not protecting 100% of that rolling herd average. You actually can choose your protection level all the way up to 90% of your production.